13 years ago, Harry and Deirdre Margery were looking for a home. They came upon Lympne Castle in Kent, dating back to the 12th century, fell in love with it and bought it, complete with ghosts, magnificent views over Romney Marsh, and in a corner of the estate, a Roman ruin. They had no idea when they took possession of their castle that it would totally change their lives.
Now, this is a good place to sit here.
Within 10 years, Harry Margery had given up his career as a naval scientist with the Admiralty to devote himself to reproducing early maps.
We came here primarily because we wanted a house. With the house, we found we had a castle, which we had to do a lot of maintenance work on to get it sorted out, opened that to the public.
Well, we enjoyed doing it, and we've preserved a lot of it, and it's in much better condition than it's been for a very long time.
I think this is true. So we've achieved something.
We've achieved something,
there.
yes.
But the other thing, of course, is that somehow or other, because of maybe I suppose because it's a castle, we've got involved in so many other things. You know,
yes.
We've got opening to the public. We've got quite by accident, of course, through the castle, we got involved in this big commitment into maps, which meant that I had to make this became virtually a full-time job. The reproduction of maps starts with a full-size photograph of the original which is going to be reproduced. As this can be a big sheet of map, this requires a camera with a 24-inch, at least a 24-inch by 30-inch coverage, which is quite some camera. It weighs a bit, something like a ton on its spring mountings. It's made of sort of super mahogany fitting, and I think it is something like 70 years old. It's slow to use, but of course it has this big coverage and a first-class lens. So whatever is on an original map, it is reproduced on the photograph and therefore reproduced on the final reproduction. I've just started on what I suppose must be a major work for a small private publisher. That is the reproduction of the old series Ordnance Survey in its early state as 10 volumes. By the end of the 18th century, there was a military need for good maps of the whole country, because remembering we were engaged at this time with the French. So that it was natural that when you thought of new mapping, that you would in fact go to the military. And in fact, this is why the early maps, good maps, came from the Ordnance Survey. The method that was going to be used was based on triangulation. That is, you start with the baseline, you measure salient points as angles from that baseline, and so on. You gradually build up for the whole country from salient points is a series of triangles. The need was for a theodolite. And to get the high degree of accuracy that was required, bearing in mind the rather limited instrument-making facilities of the period, they had to work on large circles, and Mr. Ramsden produced a theodolite which had a bearing circle of 3 feet diameter, whereas you get the same accuracy with a modern theodolite in 3 or 4 inches. The theodolite, of course, being 3 feet diameter, having to be rigid to be so it doesn't distort, weighed something like 300 or 400 weights. This had to be humped up and down hills all over the country, and to get lines of sight, it required, on occasion, to be put up off the ground by an amount of 30-odd feet. The survey took quite a long period, and gradually the whole country was covered. My involvement in maps, of course, initially came through the castle. There is the old castle, which dates from the 12th century and was more or less finished development by the 15th century, and what we call a new wing, built in about 1904. no maintenance had been done for about 30 years. And if it hadn't been, something hadn't been done fairly soon, it would have, I think it would have reverted to a ruin again. In maintaining, we had no concept, of course, that we would ever be opening it to the public. But this was something that was forced on us, that we found that people just came down the drive, whatever we did, and if the door was left open, they came into the house.
And they said, "Is this the church?"
Or was it private? So, and if we shut the gates at the top, they parked their cars against the outside, so we couldn't get out. So we, in fact, were faced with a situation that we had to open to the public. And also, of course, there's another thing, and that is that I think it's a pity that if there is a beautiful building like this, and the castle is a beautiful building, that people shouldn't be able to see it. It's, I know there's a lot of talk about people's heritage and this sort of thing, but it does give the people some idea of what their roots are and where they've come from, and I think this is very important to people, to the nation. We started opening to the public 11 years ago now, on Wednesdays and Sundays. And we found that whatever day we decided we were going to open it, in effect, especially during the summer, people came anyway, and we found ourselves having to open every day through the summer. Last year and the year before, our total attendance were 25,000.
Now what you've got to look at, all you people, got to look up at the roof, and there you've got the famous crown posts supporting this great span of roof, which is really quite magnificent and quite a little rare. Now we will go from there into the old kitchen, which is over here. I'm very keen that children should be shown round, because I think that history is of immense value to anybody growing up, and it makes them appreciate what's happening in the world today. Are there any questions you'd like to ask about it? Yes?
What is that little door over there?
Well, now that little door is very, very old indeed, where in the very, very old days they used to bake the bread for the communion service when the Archdeacon of Canterbury came to take service next door in the church next door, and they put the fire in there and they put the bread in its little tin, in the dough in the little tin, in there, you see, and they fastened the oven door, which fitted very much better than it does now, very old iron, you see, and then they took out the bread when it was ready and they gave it to the vicar next door, and he gave it to the Archdeacon. There they were.
What's that thing for?
That is a Georgian milk pan, where you spread out the milk at night and sifted off the cream, and any of you who belong to a farming family will know exactly what I mean. Yes, darling?
Does that still work, that spinning?
The spinning wheel still works, I'm told. I don't, in fact, spin myself, but I've got a friend who's dying to try it. Now, the Domesday Book in 1085 recorded that in this part of the castle were living 7 Saxon priests who were this is the lodging of an abbey which was then built on where the church is now next door. And at this time, Lanfranc was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and these 7 Saxon priests paid a rent of £7 5 shillings a year. Think of that now. For lodging in this castle to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now they were what is called dispossessed, and they vanished, nobody knows where they went, from roughly between 1085 and 1089. And some people say they were murdered by the instructions of Lanfranc. And one person said they were murdered, one priest was murdered in the porch outside, which I don't believe because it was built in 1492. And the other person said that the 2nd Saxon priest was murdered on the stairway, going up there, and he appears, his ghost appears at the window if anybody is doing flowers in the Great Hall or anything like that. And Mrs. Beecham, who lived here between the wars, used to see him. I've never seen him, but she did. And she said he was a grave, sad-eyed priest who looked down at her arranging the flowers. And the other ghost we've got, of course, is the Roman soldier who, in the very old days, when the Romans were in the fort, down below in the fields, looked out to sea to look to see whether the Saxons were coming. And the people of Lympne say that he so enjoyed the view that he can't retire to heaven and he still wanders up and down the tower.
My involvement in the reproduction of county maps arose entirely from my desire to provide something of interest in the castle to our visitors. And a friend of ours had a map of Kent of 1769, printed in 25 sheets, and he wanted a copy of this, and I thought I wanted a copy, and other people we heard wanted copies, so I launched the prospect of this by sending a leaflet round to the people who might be interested, and eventually published the map. One of the things which has come out of this is that the original maps in the libraries are being worn out, literally worn out by the increase in interest in maps, and the big libraries are very keen on having good reproductions of maps. And with this in mind, I have had a lot of help in borrowing originals for reproduction from these libraries. By the end of the 16th century, most of our troubles, internal troubles, had come to an end, at least temporarily, at least anyway. And people began to be interested in what was going on around them. So you had the beginning of really effective mapping in Britain. The county was a convenient size for a unit of a map, so you had county maps. Now, the interesting thing about these maps are you're sort of starting from absolutely de novo. So you have a problem, first of all, of how to describe on a piece of paper a thing like a wood. And you'll see that as mapping changes, so you've got the development of the notation of maps. Another thing which is a feature of the early maps, of course, is the fact that they're part functional and part works of art. In the sea, you have not only studies of ships, which are very interesting to see contemporary design of ships, but also simply magnificent sea monsters, which all add to the beauty of the scene. John Speed produced an atlas of county maps, and in these he showed always a part of what a medieval city used to be like, and also something that happened. Now, the Sussex map has a picture showing the Battle of Hastings with William's fleet, and also a rather scurrilous piece at the bottom describing the map, which first of all refers to William as William the Bastard, Duke of Normandy, which is... then, of course, you have the first of the road maps, strip map, a road map, done by Mr. John Ogleby in 1676. This one here is from London to Arundel, and it describes to a man in a coach what he would see as he went down the road. You'll see that you meet a hill and you go up, the hill is shown as it would look like a hill, and then when you come down a hill, it's just shown as if it's upside down. Now, later in the 18th century, when you really got going on county maps in a big way, and larger scale county maps, the problem, of course, is how to pay for these maps. And these were done on a subscription basis. And this particular map by Budgeon of 1727, each man's house is indicated as at the bottom, and there is the various coats of arms of the subscribers. What is interesting is that some of the spaces of the coats of arms are in fact blank. Now, this could only mean that these people didn't in fact pay their subs, so they had their coats of arms removed. Just as a last thing, you see this is a section of one of the first sheets of the Ordnance Survey of the old series. You'll see, of course, that it is entirely functional. All the pretties and the boats and the sea monsters have disappeared.
I remember when we first came here and looked out at this enchanting view over the Romney Marsh and over the sea, Harry just said, well, I just must have this. Running a castle, which is quite a small castle, is just exactly like running a large house. We have a magnificent staff, and we all work as a team. Now, two of the pillars of the establishment are Maggie, whose great specialty, of course, is the garden, and Peggy, who is the one who organizes teas for visitors. At first I thought we couldn't possibly manage this, but she insisted that we could, and she does it beautifully. And over the years she must have made absolutely millions of beautiful scones.
We have, at the request of our visitors, produced items of special interest in association with the castle. The first of these was a guidebook. The latest are packs of playing cards, including one of the 17th century, which enables people to tell their own fortunes. One of my troubles, in fact, is to avoid reproducing too much, because my friends who collect this, that, and the other come to me and say, this must be reproduced and that must be reproduced.
Certainly not bridge cards.
Oh, I can't see that, where is it?
Buckingham. Thank you.
In the north, of course, is the clubs.
Yes.
Wales are spades, and then the middle part of the country are the diamonds.
They're a jolly
You've got a
fine
set
collection of
there.
roads.
They're rather
aren't they?
fun. These are the diamonds, you see, Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, then we got,
That
up
fits
above,
in
we got
there.
Somerset and Wiltshire,
Yes.
Hampshire, these are all diamonds, you see,
Yes.
Sussex,
All the northern ones are clubs.
yes,
There's Cumberland, Northumberland, and here's York coming up
yes,
to it.
that's right. The first was a reproduction of playing cards, which included maps of the counties. As a result of my publication of the pack, I met Sylvia Mann, who is the authority on playing cards in this country, and she very kindly lent me other packs to reproduce.
It was made in Amsterdam in about 1710 by Mortier, who I expect you know is a map maker, and shows all the countries of the world. And I was very fortunate and obtained it at a sailing Christie's when there was no competition. So that was my good luck, and I hope you will find it of interest. Yes.
Now this is rather fun, because you know how people have enjoyed my county maps,
Yes.
the modern map. I'm sure that this, one day, if I were allowed to, I'd like to reproduce these and do these in the same way.
Oh, good.
I think this would be marvellous. So what else have you got to show me?
I don't know if you know the pack which deals with the speculative boom of 1720. There are various projects and speculative enterprises, such as insurance on lives, which stayed on all right. There's insurance on horses, which I think has also survived. The fattening of hogs, I'm not sure about.
How to lose your money in stock exchange dealings, yes.
52 easy ways.
That's right. But in 1720?
Yes,
Yeah.
oh yes. Then moving on to something which I would like to interest you in, but I know there's a bit of colour about it.
Oh,
Transformation cards.
Yes.
This was a fashion in the last century for incorporating the pip cards of any pack into an overall picture. And some of them are very amusing, some of them are very attractive, outlandish. We have political ones, all sorts.
Now, these are like the old nursery cards, aren't they, where you were hiding the suit marks.
Yes.
They're very, very fine. Some of them appear to be rather naughty, too.
This is an old English one of about 1811. The same principle is involved.
Oh, yes.
And you will find on it certain figures which were popular art figures of the period, and characters, theatrical characters, pantomime and so forth.
These have got special characters too. You've got Robin Goodfellow, I can read here. I would say dished at Derby. This is somebody who's lost his money on the horses. These are rather fun, aren't they?
And the final one is one that I got at the same sale as the Mortier map cards. Is a rather gorgeous pack of cards commemorating the Battle of Waterloo.
Ah, yes.
It has German suit marks, which are a bit different from our own, and it has no queens, so you've got lots of generals and monarchs, all in their resplendent uniform of the period.
But now, of course, we have to think where we go from here.
Well, this is very easy sitting round here. We've got to preserve this place,
Yes.
and which has been here
Yes.
for 1800 years, more or less, and perhaps look forward to getting it excavated.
Oh, that'd be marvellous.
Yes, wouldn't it?
That'd be marvellous.
Yes.
So we really know what's underneath all here. Because it is, as you know, one of the very important buildings in the,
Yes,
in this
it
part
is.
of the country.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there we are. That's our job for the future.
Yes.